the Prophet and the age of the Caliphate, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this is another book I read written by Hugh Kennedy. Um, this one really is more of a heavy duty textbook um, kind of material. So I really think you got to be like at least past degree level going into post. I'm going into doing a master or something to really get a, real good understanding. I mean, his writing's beautiful. It flows. It's great. It's enjoying to read. But in this, there's a lot of anthropology in this as well. A lot of politics. Unlike the other book was kind of a brief history. But in this one, he goes into a lot of pre-Islamic times. He talks about all the different clans, um, and he talks about how Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how he establishes his Islamic state, and how the baton gets passed over to the Khalifas from Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and Ali. Um, there are some things that I quite didn't like. A lot of things I did like, however. Um, one of the things that I did learn reading about this book was that a lot of people talk about Arabs as just being kind of like a Bedouin, uncivilized kind of people, and that's how they were, which is really, really untrue. Especially when you read this, and he talks about the people of Makkah, people of Medina, people of Taif, and many, many other towns and cities that did exist um, from time immemorial, and all these other places, especially in Yemen, all along the coast, coastal areas where there's been settlements there for a long time, and these people had a very high culture. These people had a very, very established way of life, and there were the Bedouins that were kind of like rough and rugged. But people have this perception that Arabs are just rough and rugged until Nabi Sallallahu received the revelation. That is not totally true. They had the ways, they had the customs, but they did have this thing of high culture, their mannerism, and especially when you read the lives of some of the Sahabas, you really do get that understanding. Like, the family of the Umayyads, when you go into Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah and Uthman and many of us, they were very, very aristocratic kind of people, and they had their ways of doing things. And he talks a lot about how they're the kind of people that were like went around and forming new cities like Egypt. In Egypt today is called, which is known as Masr. Masr really means like a new settlement, like a new town being established. And you had Masrs everywhere back then, but the one that remains with um, maintains the name Masr is Egypt, but there are Masrs all over the place. And he goes into a lot about like northern Arabia, or going almost into like Syrian lands and Iraq and places like that. So you get a real good understanding why some people were running the show and why some people were the front runners. It was the Yemenis and the Syrians that really were running the show because they came from that kind of settled way of life, so they knew how to run administration. And also after taking over the Persians and Byzantium with the Romans, the Muslims developed further into administration. But it's amazing piece of work. It's for academics, I would say. It's not something you can just breeze through. It's real heavy duty stuff. There's a wealth of knowledge in there. A lot of detail about the Abbasids, as just much as about the Umayyads and how Islam really got established in the East. I would say we're talking about Central Asia or the farther parts of Iran and places like that. Like today's maybe Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, those kind of areas. He talks a lot about what happened there, and he just kind of finishes about when the Seljuks arrived. But that's when the comes to an end. But I mean, if you want in-depth knowledge about the Khilafat, the Caliphate, and the time of our Prophet ﷺ before that as well. And I think he does justice. I don't see him as a pure Orientalist or anything like that. He has his views. After all, Hugh Kennedy is an Englishman, a Christian man as well. But I think he does justice. But that's up to everyone else. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you probably wouldn't agree with what he's saying. I don't agree with everything or his approach to everything or how he kind of like explains things. But most of it I do. Most of it seems feasible. So yeah, if you want to learn about how or gain in-depth knowledge, this is your book, The Prophet and the Age of the Caliphate.